The Great Pyramid of Giza has stood for roughly 4,500 years, and people still argue about how it was built. This video sets that argument aside and asks a narrower, more answerable question: what would it actually cost to build it today, using modern labor and modern material prices? For real numbers, no guessing. Start with what the pyramid is actually made of. The commonly cited estimate, traced back to a 19th century survey by the Egyptologist William Matthew Flinders Petrie and refined since, puts the total at approximately 2.3 million stone blocks. That is the first number, and it is worth sitting with for a second: 2.3 million individual pieces of quarried limestone, each one cut, moved, and set into position by hand. The second number is what those blocks actually weighed. The average core block, the ordinary limestone that makes up the bulk of the structure, comes in at around 2.5 tons. But that is an average, not a ceiling. Blocks in the lower courses run considerably heavier, some past 10 tons. And the red granite blocks lining the king's chamber deep inside the pyramid, quarried at Aswan and floated roughly 800 kilometers down the Nile, weigh up to 80 tons each, roughly the weight of a fully loaded semi-truck, cut from solid rock with copper tools and stone hammers. Put those two numbers together and the construction timeline becomes almost hard to believe. Ancient historians and modern archaeologists disagree sharply on how many workers this took. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing 2,000 years after the fact, claimed a rotating workforce of 100,000 people. Most modern archaeologists, based on evidence from a nearby workers' village, put the figure much lower, a permanent crew of around 20,000, working year-round. Either way, the pyramid itself is generally dated to roughly 20 years of construction. 2.3 million blocks over 20 years works out to over 300 blocks a day, one every few minutes of daylight, every single day, for 2 decades, without a single day of modern lifting equipment. Now bring that into the present. What would quarrying and transporting a single one of those blocks cost with today's labor and machinery? A 2021 cost analysis, factoring in modern limestone quarrying, cutting, and transport, priced it at approximately $495 per block. That works out to just under $200 per ton of stone. That is the third number, and it is the one the whole modern estimate is built on. Multiply $495 by 2.3 million blocks and the material cost alone comes to about $1.14 billion. Add a bare minimum estimate for modern labor, construction crews, equipment operators, site management, and the total lands at approximately $1.2 billion. That is the fourth number, and on its own, it sounds almost reasonable. A single modern skyscraper can cost more. But here is where this video has to be honest about something: that $1.2 billion figure is not the whole story, and treating it as the final answer would be misleading. It counts materials and the barest possible labor. It does not count modern safety regulations, which would slow construction to a fraction of the ancient pace. It does not count land acquisition, environmental permits, site security, or the logistics of moving that much stone through modern Cairo instead of ancient Giza. When those factors get folded in, the estimates climb fast. The French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin, comparing the project to the construction cost of the Hoover Dam, has put a full modern rebuild at around $5 billion. Older television estimates from the early 2010s, adjusted for today's inflation, land past $7 billion. Some comprehensive estimates, the ones that try to account for every modern regulatory and logistical cost, run as high as $10 billion. That is a real disagreement, not a rounding error, and it comes down to a genuine question: are you pricing the stone, or are you pricing the entire modern undertaking? This video is not going to pretend that disagreement doesn't exist by picking whichever number sounds punchier. The honest answer is a range, somewhere between $1.2 billion, if you count materials and labor alone, and $10 billion, if you count everything a real modern construction project would actually require. 2.3 million blocks. 2.5 tons on average, up to 80 tons for the granite. $495 to quarry and move just one of them today. And a total modern price tag that honest sources place somewhere between $1.2 and $10 billion, depending entirely on what you choose to count. No figure in this video is invented. Where the sources disagree, we showed you why, and we showed you the range instead of hiding it.